In this video we want to talk about SWOT and SMART and look at these terms in the context mostly of the HR function within business. So let's start by talking about the SWOT and SMART targets. Well, SWOT analysis has been commonly used within organizations for many years. It allows an organization to assess its internal and external environment. SWOT means strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. So a SWOT analysis is very important for businesses to enable it to assess its performance, to look at its strengths and its weaknesses, its opportunities and its threats, to enable it to get a snapshot picture of how well it's doing and what are its opportunities, what's going right, what's going wrong, and so on. So a SWOT analysis is a very important tool, particularly in the context of strategic management, but it can be applied to HR departments. It could be applied to individuals. Individuals may apply the same type of analysis to themselves to see what are their own individual strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and the threats that confront them. So it can be used in a personal context. Individuals can develop careers and personality by identifying their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, by identifying their SWOT characteristics. Reviewing identity, abilities, personality and applying it to a SWOT framework will allow a potential employee to better select a suitable career. Once a person has undertaken this and undertaken it properly and honestly, just set out 4 headings: strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and then fill out honestly about themselves under those headings. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are the opportunities that they've got, and what are the threats that confront them? Once an individual has filled this out, then they are in a better position to make decisions about their suitable careers, about which way to move, which career to select, and what to do in life. So it could be applied on an individual level, or it could be applied, as I said earlier, in the context of strategic management, looking at the overall performance of an organization, its strengths, its weaknesses and so on. So it can be applied at more or less any level. It's used as a performance monitoring tool. Line managers and HR practices use SWOT as a self-assessment technique. The HR department may ask individuals to fill out their own SWOT analysis to see what they consider to be their strengths, their weaknesses and so on. And they could use this over a period of time. They could ask people to fill out a SWOT sheet at a particular moment in time, and perhaps a year later ask them to fill out a SWOT sheet again and look at the differences and look at what's changed, and that could form the basis for some performance monitoring or some appraisal or more constructive help that's channeled towards the individual based on what they see about themselves in one time period vis-a-vis a different time period. Line managers on a regular basis review employee skills audits and SWOT analysis. The review will enable managers to work with employees to help them achieve their goals and potential. It's important that the organization understand individuals and understand the aspirations of the individuals, but also understand their capabilities, understand their aspirations and their abilities to achieve those aspirations. Are they realistic? And what sort of training programs are required, if any? What sort of support is required? So a SWOT analysis is a good starting point in looking at operators and employees and looking at all strata of management, looking at the various personalities and looking at what their strengths are, what their weaknesses, the opportunities they've got, the threats that they confront, looking at all of this and trying to get a picture of what supportive measures can be put in place to enable the people to achieve their aspirations. Appropriate training can be tailored to individual employees' needs, and progress can be monitored through performance appraisals. Of course, this is quite expensive. Having specific training for an individual is an expensive part of perhaps a HR department's budget. It eats into the budget. It is more efficient to have several employees undertake the same training, particularly if outside personnel are required or outside agencies are required to deliver personalized and detailed training in some aspect of the work. So that does not detract from the need for SWOT. A SWOT analysis based on an individual is still important because it does still give a picture of the type of person it is, the strengths of that person, the weaknesses and so on, and it's a good snapshot picture of the individual. It may be filled out by the individual about him or herself. There may be questions about its honesty. Perhaps sometimes people exaggerate their strengths and play down their weaknesses. But having said all of that, it is a snapshot and it's a good starting point. If we look at the strengths, which are sometimes described as internal, well, look at the qualifications of the person and the experience of the person. These could be strengths. Good qualifications, good experience, good knowledge of the product, knowledge of the market, knowledge of processes, good generic knowledge, widespread knowledge, as well as perhaps detailed knowledge of the processes within the organization, within the company. Good personal attitude, somebody who's able to look positively on situations and deal positively with his or her colleagues. Has good motivation, is able to apply him or herself in the situation and will be enthusiastic to get a good result. They're motivated. Whatever motivates them, it could be salary and remuneration, conditions of employment, prospects for promotion, self-worth. They may just simply be motivated because they want to prove to themselves that they can do the job and they're interested. Look at their skills and their qualities. Over and above their qualifications, look at what skills they've acquired. Perhaps practical skills, perhaps interpersonal skills, being able to deal with a variety of people and feel at ease in dealing with others. Look at other personal strengths. For example, look at hobbies and interests. See what is it that motivates people and what do they enjoy doing, and see if there's a connection between what they enjoy doing and their work commitments. It could be that they're interested in playing chess or playing strategy games on the computer, which suggests that perhaps they have a function or a role to play in terms of planning the organization, or could be consulted in the context of planning, because they can anticipate problems and look at different scenarios and perhaps look laterally at situations as well. Look at their hobbies, look at their interests. It's all a part of the person, and if they've got a wide variety of hobbies and interests, it means the chances are they have more strengths. Also, look at the weaknesses. Again, we call them internal. Look at the gaps in your qualification or in the applicant's qualifications. Just look at where did the qualifications fall short. What aspect of the qualification needs development. It's often the case, for example, somebody coming from an arts background into business may be weak in quantitative areas, but nonetheless will need quantitative skills if they're going to interpret data and interpret facts and figures and look critically at reports which contain quantitative information. So look to the overall qualification, look at gaps. There's always gaps. It could be somebody who comes from a quantitative background into business will be weak in terms of communication skills, English skills. Again, it could be a gap. Sometimes people are just generally rounded. They're the fortunate ones. These are the more interesting ones. They're good at almost everything. Sometimes we encounter people like that. Look at the gaps in your experience or in the person's experience. Look at what they've worked at in the past, the tasks they've undertaken, and see what gaps there are in that experience. Gaps in knowledge. It could be the weakness is having no finance or very poor finances. Sometimes people need retraining, or the need to perhaps have time out from work to acquire new skills, but they can't afford it. They can't afford to go to a college course or undertake training. The need to work, the need, the resource, the income from employment. They have commitments towards family, themselves, they have bills to pay, so they can't afford the retraining. Could be poor personality. Sometimes people are hot-tempered, or they could be lazy. It's a part of being a human. We're all not the same. Some people are very motivated, other people are not. They just want a quiet life, to be left alone. Other people get upset very easily and take comments very personally, and they're a source of there's a source of issue and problem in dealing with those people. So not everybody's the same. We have to recognize this. There could be other personal weaknesses. Weaknesses about concentration, being able to focus on work. People who get distracted easily. People who are not that motivated about the particular work they're doing. People who are have other interests, perhaps outside interests, that overwhelm their concentration and their ability to focus on work issues. There are all sorts of other aspects that can be taken into account. Opportunities. Well, looking at the number of job vacancies, these may be opportunities for the individual. There may be a large number of vacancies that suit the individual. So there are a large number of opportunities. It depends on the types of skills and qualifications the individual has got. If the skills and qualifications are very specific, there will be fewer opportunities. Jobs like that only perhaps come up once in a while. But if the skills are more generic, there may be a lot of opportunities. A scientist, somebody who's, let's say, gone to very high level, perhaps at university in science, and have expert knowledge about some particular scientific process, the chances of that person finding a job looking for someone with that exact knowledge is very rare. Whereas somebody less qualified but has wider skill sets, the chances are find it easier to find employment. There could be business opportunities as well. Set up your own business. That's a possibility. Looking at business opportunities, sometimes people become entrepreneurial, or they are entrepreneurial. They're constantly looking out for opportunities for themselves, and they see a gap and they may become self-employed. Look for available scholarships. Sometimes organizations offer finance to people to study particular skills or particular processes. perhaps undertake a course looking at computer skills and computer processes as applied to something, and there might be scholarship, there might be money available to finance that. There might be academic opportunities. It could be local colleges are opening courses on some particular interesting study area, and this may afford new opportunities to the individual if they successfully complete the course and add it to their existing set of qualifications and skills. So sometimes there could be new possibilities offered from perhaps educational institutions or skilled-based institutions who are offering additional courses. There might be available support from all sources, from a company who wish to support individuals who study a particular phenomena or process or acquire particular skills. Maybe local government offers support. It can come from a variety of sources. There might be bursaries. Sometimes colleges have bursaries. Perhaps people who studied at the college in the past have left inheritances for the college to be used to support poorer students. So sometimes there are bursaries, finances available from colleges. They have a source of finance that they've set aside to help needy students. The threats, well, potential financial difficulties is always an issue. People undertake particular courses of development only to find that they can't afford to finish it because finance ran short and they needed to go back to work. It could be the government is cutting back on certain areas because fiscal policy is such that the government needs to cut back on its own spending to try and pay the national debt, or because the country can't afford particular services. So the government may cut back, and that may be a threat to the development of the individual who wanted to do particular courses at, let's say, a local college, but the local college is now about to close down because the government can't afford to keep it running. There could be competition from rivals. It could be that other individuals who have similar skills and interests are doing other things and developing themselves, and that's a source of competition. So when an individual applies for a particular job or a particular type of employment, there may be a lot of competition for it, and some of the candidates may be very highly qualified. It could be that the country is just facing some sort of up and down situation in terms of the economy. The country goes through periods of recession and boom, perhaps, and it could be that particular sectors in the economy might be turning down, and those are the sectors that perhaps an individual has particular skills in, but those sectors are in decline. It could be changes in the marketplace that invalidate your skills or invalidate the skills of the individual. Markets have changed, products have changed, because there's the aspect of globalization and cheaper imports, so that companies are closing or changing their product lines. There's the onset of very rapid technological change, which make existing skill sets out of date very quickly. So these are threats to the individual. So you can see here from the slide, there are lots of strengths we can identify, and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, and the individual can fill these out specifically under these headings and then get a picture of what is necessary to fulfill the requirements of the marketplace and to try and ensure that the person can move into meaningful employment. But the individual can do it, but the organisation may ask for it as well, and see how these are changing over time. So to see what the individual is doing to improve him or herself. So it's an important piece of analytical equipment. A SWOT analysis is widely used. Now, SMART targets are an important component for employee development. During performance appraisals, line managers must establish SMART targets for employees. And we'll see what SMART is in a second. But this is important as well, and line managers tend to establish SMART targets for employees. Targets ensure that employees are constantly growing and developing key skills. So, without getting into SMART just yet, what it means is that line managers and management in general must set targets for employees that are achievable, but also will enable the employee to grow, enable the employee to develop skill sets, and to be able to develop their capacity to work under different situations, perhaps under pressure. They're able to work comfortably in different situations because they have attained higher skills and have developed a wider package of skills. Managers can monitor performance through regular appraisals and review of targets. So managers set the individual's targets and then appraise the targets, perhaps after 6 months. To have a meeting again and go back over what they agreed before and see if they have been achieved. So it's a performance review to see how the individual has changed, what the individual has done to try and meet the requirements that were agreed at a previous meeting. So let's look at SMART and see what's meant by it. We've talked about why it's desirable. Well, we start with the letter S in SMART, and this goes to specific. The objectives that are set out must be clear, and they must have a clear focus. They must be specific. It's pointless saying to an employee at a meeting, let's say an appraisal meeting, that they want the employee to generally develop a new set of skills. Just generally develop something. That doesn't mean anything. It was far better to be specific and say acquire skills on how to do the following, how to fill out this form, or how to use a spreadsheet on the computer, or how to. So it's very specific. Now that can be monitored very clearly at the next meeting. It's a specific objective. Now the M in SMART, well, is measurable. The objectives should include an element that can be measured. If the objective was to for the employee to learn how to use a spreadsheet, then that's in a sense measurable. The manager can give the employee a spreadsheet and ask them to enter formula and to move cells and copy and paste and put in checksums and balances, and so it is measurable to some extent. It's the individual demonstrating that they have got a competence that was required under the specific requirement. So in a sense it's measurable. It's testable. The A is achievable. The A in SMART is achievable. Targets must ensure that the employee can achieve them. The targets set must be achievable. If the targets are not achievable, they're unrealistic. And there's no point in asking the operator to try to achieve something that can't be achieved. It's just a waste of time. So they must be achievable. They must be specific. You must be able to say exactly what's required. It should be measurable. You should be able to demonstrate a competence in it. And it should be achievable. This should be capable of being done. The R is realistic. Targets should be in line with organizational goals and their resources. They should be realistic targets. asking the operator to learn how to program a new operating system for the computer. Now that's achievable under certain sets of circumstances. If the operator is given a long course of training and perhaps sent back to college or university and retrained completely, and it's measurable and it's specific, but it's not really realistic. There are operating systems. There's Windows and Linux and all sorts of operating systems available. So why set something that's not realistic? So that the objectives that are set should be viewed by the employee as realistic. These are achievable, and they're realistic, and they're measurable, and they're quite specific. It's clear what the person needs to do. It should be time bound. That's the last letter, T, in SMART. It should be time bound. There must be a deadline so success can be measured. Setting out the objective, let's say learn how to use spreadsheets. That's the specific objective. It's measurable, so you can test whether the person knows how to use a spreadsheet in a year's time or 6 months' time. It's achievable. People can do it. That's achievable. It's realistic as well. You're not asking the world. You're asking for something that can be done, and it's time bound. Learn how to use spreadsheets in the next 6 months. So it's time bound. Those are the SMART objectives. So we've got two techniques here in this video. We've looked at SWOT, which looks at the person in terms of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and takes a more general view of the type of strengths the person has and the weaknesses and so on. And SMART is what the organization, perhaps the line manager, can require of the employee. It sets the employee a task, but the task should meet the SMART requirements: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound. So those two techniques should be borne in mind. They're important. That's all we're going to deal with in this class, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.